We initially found 2 individual victims. We went on to find, I think it was 53 victims, and then with the police, just over 400 victims were identified through this particular case, the largest case in European history for this. What ended up happening was you had a business in the UK that wanted to pay a fair wage, minimum wage, for the jobs in the agricultural setting, serving a lot of the supermarkets and businesses that you would buy from on an ordinarily basis and not think anything of it. Well, they couldn't get the people at minimum wage who wanted to do those jobs in the agricultural setting. So off the back of it, they went to a recruitment company. Now, what happened for these traffickers, they managed to embed someone in the recruitment company who worked for them.
Welcome back to the BoredMan Podcast, here with Matt, Jay and James. Here we go, another one.
How you doing, Matt? And we've got Tim Nelson here from Hope for Justice. He's the CEO of Hope for Justice, which is one of the largest anti-slavery charities in the world, right?
Yeah, it's indeed.
So,
great to be here.
Thanks. Cheers, Tim.
That's just need to clap him in straight away.
100%.
We've got someone that does something really good.
Yeah. This is what we were saying earlier on about somebody that can really help people.
Yeah. Like we've done a couple of things and talked about stuff online, and we've got someone with us that is actually doing something really good for people.
Yeah, doing a lot of good in the world, yeah.
You know, that's his life. It's great.
Yeah. Tim, maybe I should let you know how this came about as well, the podcast, just so you know. So Tim and I know each other. We've done some work together in that space. And, we always thought about doing podcasts, but, everyone's doing a podcast. But Matt said to me, James, I want to do one. Would you be involved? And I said, I'd love to, because he's a real doer. Yeah. He just gets things done. So I think I mentioned him to you before.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, he made the movie that he tells everyone about every 5 minutes called Prize Fighter.
And, you can do the plug today. And, where can we watch Prize Fighter?
Prize Fighter's on Amazon Prime and starring Russell Crowe, Ray Winston and Matt Hookins.
If you can get 6 minutes in, you get to see James's part.
Yeah. And Lucy Martin, it's starring Lucy Martin as well. So Matt said, and because he's a doer and because, we through all of our working lives, we've just met really cool people. And we want to try and put some of that out there and some good information. So, and Jay's been working with Matt for a long time as well. I actually met Jay filming in Malta and we all just got on really well. So it just makes sense to start a podcast. So
no, that's amazing. Great to be here.
We would always sit around and just chat about stuff, and it would either be really interesting stuff or it would go like funny and just be laughing or taking the mick out of each other. But I don't know. We came up with so many different topics, right? We were like, right, where can we hit? We've got this topic, that topic. Yeah. You were obviously mentioning people as well. Yeah. So great to have you on. So great to have you here. It's real pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tim. So I thought I'd get straight into it, and I always tell people this sort of story, and I don't know if it's accurate, maybe you can correct me, but, there's 3 of the largest serious crime industries in the world. You've got guns and arms, weapons, drugs, and the third one's human trafficking, right? Yeah. Is that correct?
Well, there's estimates on it that it could now be the second largest. So depending on where arms are in any given year, and again, lots of these are estimates, but it's definitely in the top 3. For the largest industries for serious and organised crime across the world.
Right, what, 200-300 billion a year, something like that?
The estimates are at the moment, it's somewhere in the region of $150 billion a year. Right. But again, they're estimates. Yeah. And there are so many people who can come up with models on what it could or could not be, but the most kind of well-respected organizations will go with that figure of about 100.
Right. So what's that then? That's the value of it, or what's the?
Yeah, to criminal enterprises. That's how much it's making for them all over the globe. So if you imagine across every form of what is modern day slavery or human trafficking, sometimes they use that term, whether it's the principal 3 that people look at are sexual exploitation, where people are held in brothels and forced into sex against their will, kind of domestic servitude. I don't know if you saw the stuff on Mo Farah recently, where he was brought into the country as a boy to actually work in homes. And then the third one is labor trafficking. Those people are forced to work in agricultural settings, in businesses, and forced against their will. They're the 3 principal ones that you hear of. There are 2 others, which are kind of forced marriage. And then alongside that, we also have where people see organ harvesting happen, where people are taken against their will for organs that they've got. But in countries where there is organ donation schemes, that really doesn't happen.
That's just crazy.
If you add up all the money that comes in through that organised crime syndicates, like everything that's paid and spent, 150, I think 180 billion or whatever it is, that's the 3rd or 2nd most serious crime industry in the world, only second to guns and drugs. So that
crazy.
Yeah, people don't realise how big it is.
Yeah.
Like that alone is just huge.
Mental.
Yeah.
Would you say I'm just going to throw it out there. I would assume that the biggest one out of the areas you just discussed would be the sexual trafficking, but I don't know if that's...
It's estimated that sex trafficking is the biggest.
Right.
As we look at it across the board, it's interesting because here in the UK, actually, the thing that's being found more than sex trafficking is labour trafficking. And just on last year's figures, 43% of the people who were found in the UK were children. So the perception of people is again that it's people being brought in overseas. But in the UK, the number one place where people are trafficked from was the UK. So it's not until you start really getting under the skin and thinking, well, there's someone's daughter, someone's son. Well, there could be my daughter, there could be my son. So until people actually will do something about it.
And how did you get into this, Tim? Because obviously I know you from your work, like in human trafficking. So I know it's slavery, or anti-human trafficking. But how did you get into it? I know we had a sort of brief chat before, but what brought you like to this point of, when I met you weren't the CEO, and now you're running like a large charity like this. So how did you get to that point?
So for me, what got me into it is originally I've got a degree in technology. I thought I was going to be a tech stockbroker, but ended up going into banking. And one of my clients was setting up an offshore investment trust in America. And he was putting a couple of $100 billion of his own money into high-tech stocks and invited me to sit for a couple of weeks as an advisor. And I found myself in Los Angeles with a night spare. A friend of mine who worked for a children's charity said, would you like to come out in Sunset Boulevard? Who wouldn't want to do that? And I'd only heard, growing up in Northern Ireland, you'd only hear things like that on films like Pretty Woman and other things like that. So we went out for a night out and he said, do you mind if a friend comes along? And that guy who came along introduced himself as a slave hunter. And whilst we were out for dinner, he was talking to Condoleezza Rice, who was working for the Bush administration. And he was arguing about the human trafficking register and girls in cages that were being shipped all over India. And he couldn't quite work out why they downgraded the human trafficking kind of report for India, while still he had seen girls in cages just the week before. And he came off that dinner and showed me images. And it was like those images kind of burned in me. And his challenge to me was, I don't need your money. I just need you to do something about this. Those people that are held against their will might not be in cages, but they need someone to help them. So off the back of it, I came back to the UK, spoke to pretty much everybody I knew. And a friend of mine, Chris, had met 4 individuals in Manchester that were looking to put on an event to tell people about this issue. And he said, oh, you could get involved, you could get behind all of this and see how this should grow. So there were kind of around 10 of us that got involved to set up Hope for Justice, the charity. And 11 months later, we hired the NEC and we got 5,884 people to our first event. So I sat on the founding board for a good period. And then when we went international, then came on board part-time and then full-time.
When was this?
So 2008 was when we did our first event, which we called The Stand, because we wanted people to take a stand against this issue. And then I came on board part-time 2013, full-time 2015, and at the beginning of last year took over the CEO role.
And it's hard for like people to hear. Do you know what I mean? I think that the biggest issue that I've found is, when I tell people about it, they're like, wow, that's really bad. And then it's on to, the next thing that's in their mind. Because it's a really, you just want to see positive stuff, especially when you're looking online. But I think it's so important that people understand this message and the work you're doing all day, every day of your life, along with many others, to help these people, right? So I've noticed just a lot of people turn off to it. So I think it's really good to sort of talk about like how you got there and, and what you're doing in the future.
I think people need to see it, don't they? Like, you said you saw those images and that completely changed your, like you changed your life essentially because you went into a different field and it, completely changed you. So you have to, as difficult and as like painful it is to see it. And if you don't want to see it, you have to, because that's how you spark change.
Did you feel that you had to go out to these places and see it for yourself and make change from the source of where it was happening?
Well, at the beginning, we weren't sure. And we sent teams out to go and look into places like India and other where can we place resource? Could we help in any way? Can we help other charities that are working on the ground?
Because I'm sure like with the organised crime, there's a lot of danger, surrounded that. So, you're having to have some security with this as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that behind all of this, there's kind of a sense of fear. Now, I grew up in a different kind of family to most. My mum was principal private secretary to the Northern Irish office at the time of the Troubles. So we had like a car bomb planted outside our house when my mum and dad were building a house. And you grow up with that kind of sense of fear that pervades the community, where something could happen at any point in time, but you can't live your life by that. And if you start to live your life by it, you shrink down into never wanting to leave your home. So kind of off the back of that basis, or that lens that I see life through, there is fear there, and we have to make sure that we are mitigating any risks that may be there for people. But right at the beginning, we were consumed by what can we do? A bit like we described, it's like, this is bad. How can we do something that's going to make a difference? And initially we looked at internationally, but the more that we looked at the UK, we were saying we have to start here, because if we don't start here, it won't be able to, people always excuse it as Southeast Asia's problem, or something in India or China or somewhere like that. But until you start seeing it in the UK, it radically changes your perception on life. And I mean, some stuff is really dark. Some stuff, actually, you can start to see positive behavioral change. Because if you knew that your T-shirt had been made because people had picked cotton in Uzbekistan, then you might ask different questions when you're buying your T-shirts.
Yeah.
And then if you thought like, hey, I could change culture by me asking different questions. If I could ensure that the pounds that I'm spending, the dollars I'm spending, the yen I'm spending, whatever country you're in, it can change behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fear thing as well is everywhere. It's so weird to think about fear, because fear is a thing that people don't want to go near, or they get scared, or they don't want to do. When actually fear, I think Mike Tyson said this, fear is your friend. Like, fear puts you in those situations where your body, different types of energy makes you change things, or makes you live in a different way. You need fear to, invoke change, I think, which is like, it sounds like that kind of had that impact on you as well. And it's like,
yeah, I would agree. There's a music artist, Ben Howard, and he's written a song, Depth Over Distance. And in it, he talks about we all live in the confines of fear. At some level, there's a pervasion of where fear is, and we all live in that. But it's whether or not you're prepared to live to the extremities of where fear is. And some people are very much wanting to absolutely live to the end of themselves. We wouldn't advocate people putting themselves in risky situations. In the early days, we just didn't know what we were doing to the same degree that we do now, and we know what the real and relevant threats are. We have had our team threatened on numerous occasions, and other anti-slavery organizations have actually had individuals killed across the world. So we really have to take this threat. As James said, it's serious and organized crime. If people think they can make millions off the back of doing this, and you come in to disrupt that crime, you're just a threat. So then people will want to take you out.
Wasn't it a place in South America you were looking to open, and they sort of said, look, if you open up here, we're going to just take all of your staff out?
Yeah, there's been a couple of places that we've looked at where there is a sense that if we did go into that area because of cartels, or because of the way that serious and organized crime is operated, you're just a hit away from being able to shut you down. So it's really important for us that any country that we go into, we manage and mitigate the risks to the best of our ability. But that shouldn't stop us from understanding that fear is everywhere. You can walk down the street and be hit by a bus. That's a fear.
Yeah.
And therefore you don't stop walking down the street because you could get hit by a bus. You go on the sidewalks or the pavements to try and avoid it. But in everything that we're trying to do, we've got an amazing group of people all over the world who are just sold out on wanting to make a bigger difference and see an end to this.
How many people do you work with?
Alfie, move the mouse.
We've got just over 400 staff.
Wow.
We're not quite at the 500 staff limit at this stage, but we are pushing towards that. I've laid down a vision that we want to grow to 10 times our size in the next 10 years in terms of impact. So that means that we're going to have to practically grow 26% compounded year on year.
Wow.
So to put it in kind of context for you numerically, this last year, we saw 1,499 children that we were able to take from a place of exploitation and bring back to their mums and dads.
Wow.
Which countries was that?
Across all of our countries that we work.
1,500?
1,499. We didn't quite hit the 1,500. But it's really important for us because we've brought children back to their parents who their parents have had funerals for because they thought they were dead. It's that level where if you come through that, I took a team to go and climb in Kilimanjaro at the end of 2019. And we went to Ethiopia first before Tanzania. We went to one of our centers in Addis Ababa. And we had a dad who went to see his 11-year-old daughter who he had not seen for 6 months. And I'm telling you, if you saw them come together, This guy had traveled 300 miles to be reunited with his daughter. I'll tell you, would walk through walls to make it happen, because there's something just beautiful about children being set back in families. Something about, a father's embrace to one that was lost. Wow. It's like, it's a beautiful thing, but in real terms, you just got to think about the impact that has on an entire community. And one of the best parts of my job is that I get sent through on a regular basis images of parents and family members being reunited with kids all over the world. And it is honestly brilliant.
So for that result to happen, what do you have to do to get that, to get that done?
So it depends on each country that we operate in, but we try and take those children from exploitation. That means that in some places we have teams that work into communities that are able to find those individuals. In other places we partner with, say, the police and others who can find them. Alongside that, we take them to what we call lighthouses, which are short-term transition centers where we employ clinical psychologists, where we give them the right level of care and look after them, help to rebuild them. We do catch-up education. We provide them with food and medical treatment and really start that process. We then start to try and find where their parents are. And that can be really difficult depending on the age of the child and how long they've been in exploitation. Quite often you can have family members that have passed on and the child's been left on their own, and then they've kind of run away or they've found themselves on the streets. And in some countries, girls are not on the streets more than 2 days before they're taken to be in sexual exploitation. That type of threat is real and relevant. In places like the US, it's 1 in 6 children now that run away will end up in exploitation.
So it must be so hard to find those credentials of those individuals.
1 in 6 children in America?
Yeah.
What, if they run away?
If they run away, will end up in exploitation.
And how will that happen? Will somebody just physically take them?
There are people who are out to spot individuals that are going to be at centres going through, railway stations, people in places that could potentially be picked up.
So is there an idea, like, obviously it's really hard to know, like per capita, but in total, how many sort of traffickers are there in the US? Is it, because 1 in 6 is a huge number.
It is, but if you think of it this way, and again, I'm not making any judgment on this, but in the UK and the US, it's roughly the same. 1 in 10 men will use a prostitute at some point in time during their life, 1 in 10. There aren't the number of girls who at 18 want to go into prostitution. So therefore, there is an industry that literally is out to try and groom girls into prostitution to service that need. And that is through runaways, it's through individual girls or boys going into care and literally seeing them abused to a point where they would then into prostitution. Not exclusively, but we do say.
So what percentage of prostitutes, like, would you say are there on their own will and, something they want to do? Is it possible to know?
I don't think it is. And right. I don't think we would have an accurate number for you. And in some countries, it's legalized to have prostitution. Anytime where it's legalized, the demand goes up. And therefore, there are more girls who will be exploited to fulfill that demand.
And is there like a government agency that sort of goes around and checks to make sure all that sort of thing, or not really?
We've got to say, like, on behalf of the police, the National Crime Agency, there's some amazing organizations, the GLAA and others who are Gangmaster Licensing Abuse Authority, that are working to try and find these individuals, but it's complex. Yeah. So even in this country, it's complex because it's hidden behind closed doors and it's hidden from main view that this is going on. But
the Met Police have got, last time I looked, I think there was like 236 officers working at the Metropolitan Police that were working for CSE, child sexual exploitation. It's kind of a small number, right? 236 people, police officers working in that area. If 1 in 10, children, if that happens to them.
Yeah, again, in this country, I'm not sure what the accurate number is in terms of what happens to those children. Yeah. But or the equation that the police put into this. But what I would just say is the police do a great job. It's just they don't have the resource that they need to tackle this as an issue.
And I know this is like we could do a whole podcast on the tech side.
Yeah.
But I think the guys in America, Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis, they put a load of money into this piece of software called Thorn. Yep. And Thorn actually, finds, they say on their website they find 5,000-6,000 a year, something like that, traffic victims, children and adults. So obviously they've built a repository and a database that uses software that somehow passes that information to the police, because all the police in the US, they use that, that service. Is there any reason, can that be done in the UK? Is there anything that can be added on, if anyone's watching that's, tech, really good with tech or has the funding? Is there anything that can be done? or not? Because every time I've sort of asked, I know there's so much that you're doing with it, and it's such a like human level, obviously, process for you to do, for you to carry out. So is it anything like a Thorn kind of thing that could be built here, or not really?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say to anybody who's interested in helping is everybody can do something. You know, everyone's got a gift and ability. You know, you might be on here and thinking tech, that's way beyond me. I'm not in that world. You might be thinking, what can I do? I always think there's something that you can do from where you're at. You could be working for a company as a buyer. You could be someone who is in promotions and you're buying products and services, and you can start to ask different questions. You can start to insist that products that you're buying through your company have been checked and validated, that they aren't being made through issues of modern day slavery across the globe, because this is happening on an industrial scale globally. Mm-hmm. In terms of Thornit specifically, it operates to try and find potential images online of child victims primarily. And there is other great work that's been done to try and also trace out victims that may be identifiable through hotel bedrooms and a lot of other technology that is coming together.
What, they go into the CCTV?
Yeah,
right.
They go into the images that are displayed online. Because if you've got an image of a child or an image of an individual that's been taken online, it'll be taken somewhere.
Right.
And maybe it's in a hotel. Maybe that hotel could be identified.
So use the background of the image to okay.
So there's different mechanisms that they can use technology to try and identify and understand what's going on. But I think we're only on the very early days of how technology can be used to really use and capture people. But we're now starting to see online sexual exploitation grow at a massive level. There is somewhere in the region of 2,000 transactions a minute going through for online sexual exploitation.
2,000 transactions a minute?
A minute globally going on.
So that would on the dark web or the normal web?
Normal web.
So 2,000 a minute. So that would be someone receives a link. And is this child sexual exploitation or slavery? So
on the technical definition of child exploitation, when they are used for sexual exploitation online, it is trafficking. They don't have to be moved. Right. Terminology for trafficking.
So there's that many. Of just children.
So do you think there needs to be more to be done for those platforms online that can monitor this?
Absolutely. So all of the major platforms can do more than they currently are. They're all doing something, but they can all do more. But I think there's a level that they can go to where they're identifying IP addresses, where they're geolocations, and they can link up so that we can start to make smart decisions based on, well, who has bank accounts that are linked to that IP and what transactions are going through? You know, there's been some amazing opportunities to find individuals because transactions are going through at odd times against the businesses that they're operating. You know, if you're running a car wash and most of your cars are going through at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., someone's going to ask the question of, well, you're not running an all-night car wash. Right. How is that possible?
Yeah.
I always, with this stuff, Tim, like, because I know a few bits that we've discussed, is it, do we want people to know that, right? Because I'm like, if someone's listening, right, and they're a trafficker, they're going to think, okay, maybe I'll pass my payments through, in normal business hours. So, like, how do you go through that line of saying, okay, it's right to explain how this works, and the pictures in the hotel room, and I remember when we spoke to Sherry, she was saying that they use this AI technology, and they can look at not just webcams, they can actually look at pictures of adverts that are put online and they can, using AI silhouette reference, they can tell if that's a child in the right. So it's, is it okay to sort of like for us to, tell everyone how this works, or do you think it should be like more of a clandestine thing?
I think you've got to look at it like this. Most people have this impression that traffickers are stupid. Now, what they're doing, I don't agree with in any way, shape or form, but they're not stupid. No. They're running a serious business. Yeah. So if we think for a moment they don't know that people know that processing transactions at night is wrong and that's going to potentially be caught up. It's just to the point of it is where the threat is. So there's things that I would like to see change. I look across Europe, and there are 2 countries in Europe where this last year there wasn't one trafficker prosecuted that didn't get that got a custodial sentence. So not one. There's 2 countries where traffickers were fined and they were let off. They didn't have to go to prison. 2 countries. This is why. So the threat level is very low.
It sounds like 2 major things need to happen. You mentioned the resources. It sounds like there needs to be a big vamp in more people doing more, whether you're actually employed by someone like yourself, or you're actually just doing more on your day-to-day basis. And it sounds crazy to compare it, but when they started racking up the speeding fines in the UK. You just saw, loads of people stop speeding. So that law needs to change. Like, you can't be getting fines for trafficking. That's just crazy.
No,
like, you need to be.
It's finding ways to exploit them, really, to the source. Yeah.
Well, it's like you just need to be much more serious. Like, I was going to ask, like, how are these people working for them? In a way, like, if someone's really poor and they get into drugs and they start selling drugs on the street or whatever, there's almost a little bit of a level of okay, you're super poor. We get that that's what you're doing. Like, with this, I can't even comprehend how someone can even get involved in it. It's like the worst.
Yeah, if I talk you through kind of how sometimes these things happen. We had a case in 2015, and we initially found 2 individual victims. We went on to find, I think it was 53 victims, and then with the police, just over 400 victims were identified through this particular case, the largest case in European history for this. What ended up happening was you had a business in the UK that wanted to pay a fair wage, minimum wage, for the jobs in an agricultural setting, serving a lot of the supermarkets and businesses that you would buy from on an ordinarily basis and not think anything of it. Well, they couldn't get the people at minimum wage who wanted to do those jobs in the agricultural setting. So off the back of it, they went to a recruitment company. Now, what happened for these traffickers, they managed to embed someone in the recruitment company who worked for them. And then they had a team back in Poland who they could go and find people. Some of these people were vulnerable. Some of these people were homeless. Some of these people were suffering from mental health issues back in Poland, desperate needs for jobs. And then they bring them over to the UK.
Which sounds attractive.
Place them all into the same house. So you have 30 odd people in a 3-bedroom house. So, or you've got people where they've got no access to running water, no access to electricity. They don't have access to the bank accounts that have been set up for them. So the business is paying a fair wage, but the trafficker is literally taking all of that money to themselves. And we had individuals that were being paid as little as £20 a week. And for anybody who wants to check it out, you go, Panorama did a program on it called British Slave Gangs. And it showed the real destitution that these individual victims have come through. But for a lot of the companies, they didn't have the right checks and balances in place to stop it from happening. So for me, it's about understanding what the issue is and understanding what you need to do about it.
It's funny you say that. Like my dad's a handyman and he goes around to different houses, fixing people's houses, and he would notice there was like lots of women in these houses, and they were like crammed in. And he was like, what's going on here? Like, why is there so many people? And that's just one of the issues that he was just like, right, whoa, what are these guys doing? And then he would find that they all had like one man that would just come over, make sure that they were okay. And it was just, that's where it's so organized, and it's going so under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, if girls are in a brothel in this country, what we understand is that girls will be moved every 3 weeks. So they have no idea where they are. So after a while, if you're broken, through man after man coming in and sleeping with you, you lose a sense of understanding of what life actually is. We had one girl who we managed to rescue in the UK a number of years back, and she wrote down in her diary, not her hopes and dreams, she wrote down the number of men that she was forced to service in a given day. And on her worst day, she got to 110 men. Like that level of abuse. And this particular individual tried to jump out of a first floor window, and the trafficker, even though she'd bust her leg, dragged her up by the hair, put her back on the bed for the next man to walk in. That's how little there is any thought of these individual girls or boys or lives themselves.
They're not classed as or treated as human beings.
I heard that. I remember when I came to your office last time, one of the guys there told me this. They'll tell me a story, and as part of that sort of fear thing and knowing what goes on, and that was the story, that she jumped out the window, like really damaged her leg, and then he just pulled her back upstairs. I mean, like, obviously there's something that's going through those people, whoever are doing that, and like what else can be done? You were saying, like, what if people really want to help? I know they can make donations, right, to the charity for Hope for Justice, which is really helpful because, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 14 lighthouses?
Yeah, so I think we're on 13 lighthouses 13. That we have,
and each one's $300,000 a year.
Just depending on which country it is, but we'll go with an average of about
300 grand a year. And because when obviously these mainly women go there, they've had loans put in their names, they've had mortgages put in their names. So there's like a 3 or 4 month kind of rehabilitation process to try and get everything back. So obviously you need funding for that. You need funding for all these offices you've got all over the world. So one thing would be to donate, right? And what would be the other thing? And we'll put a link to that here, right? And any money that this podcast earns, obviously, will go to Hope of Justice, of course. And what at an individual level, if someone doesn't have any money, what could they do like with their skill set to help? Do you think?
Yeah. So we said there's 3 things people can give: time, treasure, talent.
Right.
So we talked about money, the treasure. People can give either monthly, they can give a one-off, or they can give through something they're doing. So I'm going to take a team to Patagonia later this year. It's a fundraising event. People do cake sales and all that kind of great stuff around the communities to raise money. And every little bit counts. It costs us roughly about £500 a year to see a child taken from exploitation and to see them kind of rescued, to see them brought into the lighthouse for the stabilization and care, and then to monitor them up to 2 years afterwards. We've got somewhere in the region of a 92% success rate with girls and an 88% success rate with boys 2 years on, but they're still stable in those families, which is absolutely amazing.
That's amazing.
What we're doing.
Yeah.
But that money piece is easy and relatively simple for people to do. And if anyone's, won the lottery recently and they're feeling the urge to give, I wouldn't want them to fight that urge. But really, when you get into the other 2, where people can use their time and talent, that's where actually I think it becomes alive to people. And I always think if there's something that connects to your heart, that connects to the hand that you're doing something, it can make a big difference. So like you described how your dad is a handyman, like even just getting the understanding to spot the signs. That is the very basic of once you know how to spot the signs, then you can know who to ring, you can know what to do so that he can use that piece of information that only he has, only he's seeing, to be able to hopefully see people set free. In terms of people's talent, it depends on what people have that is going on in their world. So you can have people who might be an investment banker. And if you get someone who's an investment banker, they're not going to give their time to wanting to come and pack bags generally, or they're not going to want to sit on a stand, or they're not going to want to tell people about it. They might actually want to go to a big business and say to them, come on, we need to do more about this. Or they might want to set up a vehicle for people for investments, so that those investments do not have any form of modern slavery within them. But I think what we've got to try and get to is a point where people go, I'm interested, send us your details and we'll see what we can do to put people to work. Other than that, people can come up with suggestions that they could do in the communities they're in, because I don't want to fit it into a box, because it's so easy for people to go, hey, if you say that, the tech thing, I'm not in tech, so that doesn't, I'm out.
Yeah.
It's much harder for most people to go, well, everybody can do something.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, no, I don't think anyone, did you know that happens I don't think most people know that happens in the UK. I mean, I know it's as bad in any country, right? Because I remember when I read about this first, again, don't know if these numbers are correct, so check them, but 80% apparently of people in West Bengal, in Calcutta, are involved in human trafficking, a lot from families, and like it's a huge percentage. So you hear about it, but when it is close to home, there is something, it strikes a nerve with people, because I don't think people expect that is happening in the UK, that children are being like sexually exploited. It's really crazy.
Well, the fact it's one of the biggest, like you said, organised crimes. I mean, I think the thing that hits home, especially just listen to you speak, my mind's blown. That heart to hand thing is like, it takes away anything about knowing tech or having money or hearing that. Heart to hand is, everyone's got that.
Yeah, everyone wants to help.
That.
Yeah,
everyone can do that, even if it's little.
Yeah. I suppose you're running so many campaigns on the go, and it's almost like you don't really want to expose the people that have gone through this experience, but do you necessarily use them as a testimonial to attract the attention that it needs to gather people to help?
Yeah, so we would use people's stories. We anonymize them so we don't give them their name out, so victims can't be identified. I think it's important for us that we don't put individual victims on stages.
On the spotlight,
because it can create what's called second-degree trauma, where they can be re-traumatized by telling their story. And also there's a part where someone, if they tell their story and people react to it, the story itself can somehow get warped from being what the truth of the story is. And again, everything that we do is based on trust. So we have to be able to tell effective stories, but tell them well and tell them truthfully. So what we tried to do in the early days when we set up Hope for Justice, we had this, Twitter had come out 18 months before, and we used to tweet out that it was time to drink champagne and dance on the tables. And it was amazing because if you're ever going to get a celebration moment, it's somebody being rescued. And we would have people send in bottles of champagne, and we would, toast a glass to the rescue that had just happened, because there's a lot of work goes into seeing someone set free. It's not just a, hey, we swoop in and swoop out. You've got to try and build bridges of trust with individuals. You've got to see if there's a way that you can engage with them for the long term. Otherwise, what you're just going to do is interrupt a trafficker's day and see that person bounce back. But we launched into that, and when we went internationally, alcohol is a different view in different countries and different locations, so we didn't want to be prohibitive to them. So we were looking at for a way of being able to celebrate a moment. And one of the guys in our comms team had spotted a case file in Cambodia, one of our offices there in Phnom Penh, and there was a girl called Sophia. And during the day, she was held in thick chains and a big heavy padlock, and she was forced to work on a building site. And the trafficker worked out that they were able to make more money by serving her as a prostitute in the evening. This girl from 13 years old that she's held in thick, heavy chains.
So building site in the day, prostitute in the...
But what made it really awful was that her mum was involved in the whole process. I mean, you can't even get your head around that. But one of our team saw that actual image. And from that image, we created what we call a freedom wall. And we take an open padlock, and every single rescue we get, we put their name, we put the year that they were rescued. Wow. And that open padlock goes on the wall. And now we started partnering with businesses, and you've got businesses who are putting these into their foyers. And it's a massive talking point, because people go, what is this freedom wall? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Why is that person? Because it's so unusual for this red padlock to be sitting on the back of the wall. And I think what we've learned is that the power of a story. I've discovered that if something really impacts me, I can communicate it so much better to other people. If it actually touches my heart more than any other, and I get stories every single day that come through. And just before Christmas, I had a story that came through, and it was of an 8-year-old girl. And I've got girls myself and similar sort of ages, and this particular one, we have the clinical psychologists that ask them what they're hopeful for in the future. And it's a dark subject, so you want to turn the darkness towards where's the light. And this little 8-year-old girl said that she was thankful that she got to sleep in a dry bed. Wow. And there was just something about it that just arrested my spirit to the point where I went, sleep in a dry bed. And it caused me to look into her story more. And her mum had got hooked on drugs to the point where they got kicked out of the home that they were in. They were on the streets, and her mum, to be able to feed the other children, was selling the daughter from man to man. And the fact that at 8, she was thankful that she got to sleep in a dry bed. I went back to my kids and I said, you don't know you're living. The fact that there are kids like that who night after night are having to do the most inhumane things. Mm-hmm. And it literally touched me to the point where I went, I never want to take it for granted when I tuck my kids in at bed at night, that there aren't more kids out there that actually need us to get off our blessed assurance and go out and do more to try and see more of these kids set free.
And it's
shocking.
Just take a moment to take that in. It's crazy. I think, you touched on as well, when you rescue them, that's not really the end. That's kind of the beginning, because you've got to rescue them and then, try and help fix them and solve them. And there must be a process, because you might even get, children or people that go, no, I don't want to be rescued, and you don't realize what damage it's done. It must take a long time. Like you said, it can take a couple of years just to fix them. I think there's that. And then the other side of that is you kind of, in a weird way, if someone you rescued did get fixed and they were really smart, it's almost like a drug addict that comes after and then starts talking about, why not to do drugs. You kind of, that story itself from someone that's lived it is also a powerful thing. Do you ever have people like that can come through and they go, well, actually, I want to help other people now, so I want to go on stage and tell the world, because those little things are just, when you're dealing directly with someone that's had it, it's just, like I said, it's that little bit more impactful.
Yeah, we talk about the survivor voice, and the survivor has to speak into what we're doing so that we can do it more effectively. That survivor voice, we want to have it appropriately, because depending on what people have been through, we don't want to re-traffic them. So we have to put people into a place where they feel comfortable. Quite often, it can be years afterwards that people want to go back and help. And I can remember an amazing story for a girl called Mary who in Cambodia came back and spoke to all of the girls in one of our lighthouses. And just to hear her testimony about, actually, this is what my life was like. Years on, this is where my life is now. And just how that hope for the girls, that if they are in the midst of what is a really difficult time of restoration, that once you get to the other side of it, there will be healing, and there will be a completely different future for you. And that's why, it takes years to put people back together if they've been broken. But the joy and the hope of almost like punching holes in the darkness and being able to bring light to people in a way that is just so transformative. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And we've got such amazing people on our team who are so gifted at being able to help at each stage. Therapists who know what to say and when to say it and how to help them through that difficult, painful journey. And then alongside that, we want to see justice for them. So that inevitably involves potential court proceedings and trying to help people through the mental health journey of taking the trafficker to court, depending on how long they've trafficked, depending on how many other individuals might have been involved, can take years. That case that I talked to you about, the 400 victims, Operation Fort 2015, the last traffickers were prosecuted in September 2021. So it takes years to see this true justice. But actually, the difference of justice in the mind of someone who's a victim can be part of the healing process. Mm-hmm. And that's why, again, we talk about it as a 4-part strategy, that you've got to have prevention, you've got to have rescue, restoration, but you've also got to see a reformation of society.
But what, I can understand if a court fine for speeding or something takes a lot of time, but something like that, why is it taking? That needs to be a shake.
Yeah, but you start to ask questions, don't you?
Yes, and a lot of it gets
angry,
shut down.
Thinking about it.
Obviously, you've got that level of things that are happening. Then you've got this whole Epstein thing that has really brought light and opened a lot of people's eyes, right? And a lot of people are mixed about it because he really preyed, or they, as it now seems, really preyed on kind of vulnerable girls. They weren't classed as children, right? And this is something crazy. We found out the other day, we were driving through Italy, the age of consent in Italy is 14. I mean, that to me is insane, but to go into that, what's your thoughts on Epstein and, what that case sort of tells us? Because it just seems like, everybody online is saying, well, why, if Clinton was on his private jet 26 times and 6 of those occasions he didn't have his security team with him, you've got all these other kind of funny questions you keep on hearing around it. Does this just go way, way deeper than everybody knows? Or is that kind of more conspiratorial?
Yeah, I mean, Epstein in one sense is really good to kind of awaken people to what's going on in the real world. At one level, though, it can sometimes take our eyes off the wider implication of how society is abusing children, women, girls, boys. I think if I go for the wider and then come back to the Epstein thing, I think by directing it to the social elites or the individuals who were connected to Epstein, there can be almost a sense of, well, that's a bad crowd, but I'm in the good crowd. There's no way I would be involved in this. There's no way I would engage in this. And that's where whenever I say things like labor trafficking and the fact that your mobile phones, most people here will have an Apple iPhone or Samsung, and the reality is there's cobalt in each one of those phones. If you've got an electric vehicle, there's cobalt in the batteries. But 70% of it's mined by people who are being exploited in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I mean, they've made jokes on that, on the Academy Awards about and Golden Globes about, how Apple is, funded by, people that are underpaid in China or in factories and stuff like that.
Yeah, and apparently they've got nets in Apple, where all the workers, they don't jump off because a load of them jumped off and killed themselves.
I did hear about that, actually, yeah.
But it's that type of thing. So I don't want to make it just look at this, because I'm like, actually, if we kept asking enough questions, if a movement of people started saying, we're not going to have our products made by slaves. And the problem for us is there's so many products that we're being made aware of that are being made through forced labor. If you go for a pearlescent effect on your car vehicle, or women, or maybe some men here who are into the shimmer effect of makeup, it comes from a product called mica, that's being made.
No, you did look at him, so he used to wear makeup.
look at like shiny as.
Just because I'm sweating buckets.
He's the oldest one here. No stress, just shining with makeup. Are you going to stop using it?
But the youngest that looks the oldest and used to wear makeup.
But to that point, kids as young as 5 in places like Madagascar or India are mining mica, and no one's aware of it. And if they were, maybe they would ask different questions. And just to pull it back to kind of the Epstein side of things, the case itself has highlighted there is a major problem with children being groomed into sexual exploitation. It's highlighted how easy it is for individuals to do that. It's very obvious from my perspective that more people were involved or more people were complicit or compliant within what was going on. And I think it's up to the authorities as to what level of body of evidence there actually is to be able to convict people or bring people to justice. And I know there'll be teams of people looking at that. And quite often, because it's a hidden crime and because you're dealing with vulnerable individuals in the first place, it can be really difficult to get the body of evidence that you need to convict individuals. And I know there is the public conviction in the court of public opinion, but in real terms, to seek justice brought, you have to be able to bring both criminal cases and civil cases. Sometimes there's not the body of evidence to see a criminal case brought for people to serve custodial sentences. So in that view, you take a civil case to try and exert as much money as you can for what the trafficker has done to those individuals.
But also in the islands, they were saying that, there were video cameras there in his island, and a lot of it was recorded, and apparently like hardly any of it was not documented, was not documented. It was all documented at the time. So that a lot of people are saying, will all this come to light? All these people that have been involved. So
there was a funny meme on that recently where what's the guy that was like
Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew. I was literally about to
they posted a picture of him like saying like, are you sweating now in like in the heat wave in London?
Yeah.
It's like just a picture of him like, like looking very suspicious, like asking about the sweat. Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you say, because you can get honed down into one area, but you mentioned briefly clothing and tops, and clothing is the biggest. I think it way passes like food and everything in terms of the biggest agricultural problem in the world, like in terms of the greenhouse gases and everything.
Also, plastic in the ocean.
Yeah,
polyethylene.
And you go to like, great if I'm going to go to Zara or somewhere to buy clothes, but you go to like Zara, Primark, and you just think, there's no way these clothes can be that cheap in Primark. So if you go right back, someone somewhere in China or a country is making these clothes for nothing because it's being sold here for £3 or £5, and it's like it's just little things like that's a form of like exploitation and kind of slavery in a way, because there's loads that people don't know about the process before that, and it's like, I don't know, it's like trying to make people aware of all those things, like that you're just living in clothes or going out. There's so many things that you can think about.
Yeah, I think in clothing there's somewhere like 75 million people who are employed in the garment industry worldwide, and those people will be paid a range of what is fair or not fair salaries across the globe. I think what you're describing and what you're alluding to is actually a movement. Right. And what I see, culture and society changes when people go, I'm not going to tolerate this. I had the privilege just the summer before last of traveling to Northern Ireland. We took on another organisation to merge into us. And whilst I was there, I visited a place called Clifton House. Never heard of it before in my life, but this amazing building was built in the 1700s, and it was built to house children who had been in poverty. Initially 40 kids, but it was like 400 kids within 6 months. And that's amazing. And as I walked past, there was a statue for a lady called Mary Ann McCracken. Again, it's a lady you've never heard about from the 1700s.
Sounds very Irish.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I found out about this lady, she was the niece of one of the founders of this place, Clifton House. But because she heard about the transatlantic slave trade, before she had the right to own property, before she had the right to vote, she led a movement of women in Belfast that abstained from having sugar in their diet. 1700s, okay? It was before anything, by right, before she had the right to do anything, really. And then on top of that, it talked about the fact that her and a number of men led a movement that in Belfast was the first place in the UK to ban slave ships coming into Belfast port. And why that was really important is a lot of the wealth that was made in Belfast at the transatlantic slave trade was made off the backs of slave labour. In fact, the wealthiest person during the time of this transatlantic slave trade in New York came from Belfast. So it was so key and pivotal. But they led a movement to ban slave ships coming in. And then even further than that, describes when she was in the last few years of her life, when she's a pensioner, so to speak. She was rugby tackling people after the Abolition Act passed in America, that for Irish people emigrating to North America, that they would go and see their senator to ensure that the Abolition Act had been passed in their state. And I look at it and go, okay, this is before social media, before anything could be filmed and sent around the world. This is a lady who, even when she was well on in age, said, I can do something. Yeah. I have the power. I'm buying clothes. I get to determine what I'm doing with my life. I can be passionate about something. And I kind of, what I see in society is there has to be a movement to stir people from a place of apathy into action. And so that people go, actually, that's not on. And maybe I should ask a question the next time I go into a store to buy something. And maybe I shouldn't just assume that it's quality and the price that are the only things I'm interested in.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy, Tim? We actually chatted in our last episode, about, like this huge sexual economy now on Instagram right now. Everybody who kind of takes part in it is kind of willing, but there's somebody said, I'm not sure who the person's name, but they said, Instagram now is a sexual economy, right? So somebody will put up pictures of themselves, provocative pictures. They'll get loads of DMs to say, come to this country, and they'll fly all over the world, based on a promise for something. So we were saying that just the moral sort of turpitude of, humanity at the moment seems to be going downhill rather than uphill. Is that going to have a knock-on effect with all of this, or is it just two complete separate worlds?
No, it's directly connected. I think you've got to look at the main platforms. We did an experiment in April this year, and we had one of our investigators with approval from US regulators that we set up a test on Instagram. And we set up a female profile of a 15-year-old girl. Typical, we used a picture that was a stock image, where you couldn't identify which was the one of the girls. And we've documented this through a series of films that we've done. But within 30 minutes, this dummy 15-year-old girl was approached online through the DM, offering $5,000 and multiple times for images that she might be able to give of herself within 30 minutes of a profile being created. You've just got to imagine
that's insane.
Imagine if that had been going for a year. Imagine if they could develop that connection over a longer term.
Yeah. And obviously if it's real as well, it's like.
Yeah. So what you're looking at is there is an industry that is built up around abusing individuals or getting hold of things.
So, sorry, Tim, because one thing that's been, bothering me a lot, I'm very close with someone from Ukraine and been close for like 4 or 5 years. And I keep on seeing this thing where like there's jokes online which, are saying that, and I didn't know if it was real, but I went onto the government website and basically you've got this thing where if you're a refugee, when you picture refugee, you picture a very different thing because a lot of Ukraine at the moment, obviously it's not safe, but it's not as dangerous as it was. So you can leave Ukraine, you can fly into any one of the 27 EU countries and you can stay with a family or a business, it said. I remember. So I said, how are the government like checking that those people that are housing
are legit, yeah.
Are legit, yeah. Because like they're coming from like a very vulnerable position, right? And they're no idea. They're like, oh, is this? Do you know what I mean? Do you know how that's being policed?
So there is a scheme for this particular country, and in each one of the countries, I was out a few weeks ago speaking at the OSCE, which is the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and constitutes 57 different governments. And I was speaking in Vienna with a number of key government internationally, and we're starting to see girls popping up that have come into this country and come into other countries across Europe that are now popping up as being victims of human trafficking, modern-day slavery. There is a scheme to try and police and Hope for Justice. We're trying to help where we can to provide the right level of services and help and support. But we've got 100,000 individuals now that have moved to this country. Yeah. We're talking a scale that this country has never seen to be able to vet and ensure that those individuals are safe. What you're now starting to see and understand is if you want to exploit people, you look for vulnerable people. Migrants are a perfect opportunity for traffickers to exploit. So whether it's Ukraine or one of the other countries across the world where there is war, one of our biggest offices is in Ethiopia, And there's over 2 million individuals that have been displaced because of what's happening in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Those individuals have been trafficked either within Ethiopia or worldwide.
And I just read a stat the other day, 20,000 have come through to the English Channel, you know, and it's just like, it's just incredible numbers.
But to me, that sounds like, it seems crazy that the government would put a scheme together when they know, right, they know the scale at what's at slavery happens, right, in the UK. And they'd put a scheme, say, anyone can house this person. Like, to me, that just seems like it's asking for trouble, you know, and I know the budget's like huge, but surely there's a better way to do it where there's a controlled environment that they can be for 3 years, you know, rather than just any random house, someone's house.
You're talking serious numbers, though. Somewhere in the region of 10 million people have been displaced because of Ukraine. Right. No government has a scheme to be able to house them.
Right.
And what the governments are really keen to not have is camps, because anywhere where camps have been set up by the UN and others, 10 years later, those camps are still operational.
Right.
So to place people with families makes it easier because there's a sense that they can be housed in better circumstances in the large part. And for the large part, there'll be individuals, really good people in this country that have stepped up to say, we want to take care of people from Ukraine.
Right.
Is there a proper screening process to validate that?
It did say that on the website.
There is a scheme.
Yeah.
But if you're a trafficker, you will look for a loophole, you look for a mechanism to do it. And I don't doubt that there are people who've been trafficked through this process, because we're finding some of them.
Do you not think, like, I mean, as a tech person, right, my background being tech, why can they not just build like an AI platform, you know, like use DeepMind, you know, that it can fold proteins, right, AlphaFold or AlphaGo, you know, beat Lee Sedol, you know, best Go player in the world at Go. Like, can they not build something that says, right, we're going to look into all these phones, our phones have been looked into already. We're going to look in, and we can easily see using natural language processing if these are bad dudes, if these are bad girls, and find out what's going on. I know it's like a big thing, but technically that seems like the only way you could do it, technically.
You make it sound so simple.
Yeah.
And I love it, because you've got such a technical know-how and understanding of it that it brings it all to the point, well, surely we should do this.
Yeah.
But, you know, at its basic level, you've got 100,000 individuals that are arriving into this country, going into all different types of local authorities that already have compound pressures from migration or from complex needs that are in those individual communities. I think the scale of what governments either nationally or locally are dealing with is overwhelming.
Right.
And you know, you touched upon the smuggling that's happening across the channel. You know, at that level, it's really difficult to deal with. Mm-hmm. Because at one level, I understand people don't want to have unfettered migration to this country. But it's very clear whenever the government did away with the low-skill migrant visa, the numbers started growing massively crossing the channel because they were desperate to get to this country. So for me, because there's issues on not having enough people working in the workforces at the moment, I was listening on the radio recently about farmers having to literally plough products that had grown back into the ground because they didn't have the people to pick them, because we're stopping migrants from coming into this country. I think there's a sense that we need to understand and have a real educated discussion around migration. And I think what benefits it gives to us, we've got over 100,000 vacancies on the NHS at this moment in time. If I got sick, I would be very glad for anyone who was skilled enough to look after me. It wouldn't matter about the color of their skin. It would be the content of their character and their ability to help me that I would only care about. And I think at its very core, this country was built on fairness and equality. And I think there has to be a sense of understanding that for community, we need to see assimilation happen. Not just at immigration, but assimilation across the board.
Has Hope for Justice ever been documented on television, or has there been like a documentary that's, you know, exposed these charities to say, like, you know,
there's stuff on the website, but it's not getting the reach, is it?
No, and again, it's part of this sense of, do you switch off? Is there such an overwhelming sense of everything going on? Like, even with what you touched on with Ukraine, like now we're seeing people are kind of switching off when they're hearing about Ukraine at the moment, because it's like, it's hard to think about. It's hard to continue that sense of care and concern.
Same with COVID. No one wants to go through COVID again. On that point, I mean, as much as I don't want to hear it, I really want to hear a horror story, because I think you need to give a story that, like, if people are watching and listening, they need to, you know, hear it and go, right, that's going to make me do something. And you've touched upon.
Yeah, no. If I give you a story from the stand, the first event that we did, because this is the one that shocked me the most.
Right.
It was the one that gripped me. We had we wanted to tell a story of hope. So we wanted to have a mum tell a story of a child coming back. And we reached out in the community where I live, and in the same place as my wife teaches, we managed to find a mum whose daughter had been trafficked. And at the age of 15, she had started dating a guy who was 17. For 18 months they dated, okay? And he, 2 years on, gets a job offer in London. So mum lets the daughter travel to London for the day to help him into his new property.
From where? Which country was it?
From the UK.
From the UK, okay.
Okay. In the north of England. And on day
She's
one.
traveling at 15 to London.
No. 15, they started dating.
To 17.
She's almost 17.
Right.
He's supposedly 19. They travel down to London. On day one, he sells her into a brothel. She's not found for 5 years.
Oh my God.
Okay. What shocked me, the mother was white, middle class, and worked for the local council. Okay.
So they had an in.
15-year-old daughter meets a guy. No in.
Okay.
Just meets a guy. She's from a good neighborhood. She's white and she's middle class. It absolutely rocked me.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, I have in my mind who these people are.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you start to think about it, I don't know if you've got any sisters or whatever, if you've got a sister or you've got a niece or a cousin.
I've got a niece, yeah. When you relate it to that, yeah.
And you go, imagine that they're 15 and you meet the boy that's dating them and you think, it's all good, it's all good. And then on day one, she doesn't speak to the mother. Mother thinks she's run away. 5 years. Imagine what 5 years.
That's the kind of shit that scares the life out of me. And I've got a daughter, and it's like I would die for her, and I would, just if that was to ever happen, it's just like, it hurts inside,
Yeah, and that's sometimes what you got to think about, because I'm the same. I'm so overprotective. We had the discussion before. I'm like and to think that could happen, I in my mind it's like I wouldn't let it, because I would be so protective of that daughter or that girlfriend or whatever it is. But it does happen, and it can happen, And it's like, I remember the thing that set me off was I was watching. Is it Ross Kemp? Yeah. Was it from EastEnders?
Yeah.
He used to do this Extreme World thing.
Yeah, that's it,
And there was one on human trafficking. I never forget. I saw it and I was just glued to the screen. I thought, I'm here breathing, having a nice time, and this is happening. It's like something has to be done, because this is just like the most atrocious thing I've ever seen. So anytime a friend said, no disrespect to Alfie, no disrespect to homeless people, but not that you're homeless, but the homeless people, Alfie does a lot of work with homeless, right? So when people say, I'm doing this, helping the homeless, I'm always like, but I hope for justice. Like every single friend, no matter what they're doing, I'm not saying anything because it's terrible that they're there, and
Some issues are greater
they are.
Others.
That's why I feel like it needs to be put as a priority, right? Because someone will say, okay, things that are really bad, Alzheimer's, all these things, of course, and they've got cancer, they've got a special place in your heart because someone in your family's been affected. Most people, their family hasn't been affected by this. So it's not like, my mum had cancer, right? So it hits me, and do you want to help a cancer charity? Most people, this hasn't happened to. But it's the worst thing that can happen to anyone, right? Or to anyone's family. So it's almost like you need to see something or hear that story to go, right, that's it. Yeah. I'm gonna do something.
Well, we're in film production, right? And I'd love to document something that it can resonate with the people to do something. And I think getting it out on, a platform where it could just really help, we could make that happen, You
have to be careful that you don't get killed making the documentary.
No, of course not. Of course
if you don't,
but like you said,
it's not a good one if he ends up getting killed.
But the story you told, that hit home, and you really wanted to do something. I think that, that will go.
How did it end? Tell us more, because you were saying about. So she was there for 5 years.
She was there for 5 years. The police did a raid on a brothel in London, found her. Now imagine how much pain and heartache and hurt on both sides, mum and daughter, in terms of where that's from. And I think that's the bit of, you just described how if it was your daughter, if any one of us knew that your daughter was gone, what would we do?
Yeah.
And it's going, they are someone's daughter.
Yeah.
And do we even care?
This is the issue. My brain turns off even now. Like if I see a picture, it's like, shit, this is happening. When you said it, I've got a protective mechanism where my brain says, no, that didn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what happens with everybody, even with me, as much as I want to help. and I know about, you know, this from talking to you, but that something turns off. It's a protective mechanism where you don't want to feel that much pain for somebody else, which is like, you know,
Such a good point. Yeah.
but somehow you've got to be open to it.
But that is what drives you from apathy into action. When you can feel the pain and go, anytime you've ever seen anybody do something significant in life, they've seen that pain and they've not let that pain wash off them.
Yeah.
They've not been like a Teflon man to allow it to not stick. They've actually sticked in it and they're going to press into the pain and go, actually, what does that make me want to do? And how am I going to change my life as a result?
It's putting pain into action, like you said. Yeah.
And you're the best example of that, Tim, I've got to say.
No, like I want to just say there's some amazing organizations in this field that are doing such amazing work across the globe, and we're just one of them. But I'm looking at it and going, I see in everyone's life how everyone has a platform in their own world to be able to do something about it. And it's just whether people are bothered, and whether there's that point at nighttime when they're tucking themselves into bed and they're closing their eyes, whether there's a point where they go, I care enough to do something.
I want to talk about the actions that you want to put in place and where you see Hope for Justice going in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You know, what are you putting in place now? What the campaigns you're working on to see it, you know,
so if
going
I was to
into
say, like,
to progress.
In this country, we're blessed because they created what's called a national referral mechanism. And the Home Office, the people who look after the police, have a database and they document it every quarter to say how many people have been entered into the national referral mechanism as prospective cases of modern day slavery, human trafficking. So first quarter this year, there were 3,777 individuals that were fined, over 20% up year on year. Massive numbers that we're starting to see. So there's over 100,000 cases in the UK that are estimated at this moment in time of people held against their will. We don't have national referral mechanisms and systems like that across the globe. So we would advocate for more work to be done, and we're looking to develop and build an effective solution for governments to be able to bring that information to bear. Because it works like this, that the top 3 countries where people were trafficked from in the UK, number 1 was the UK, second was Albania, third was Vietnam this last year. Therefore, if I was a border force official and I was bringing people into the country from Albania or Vietnam, I might ask a few more questions because I know it's a particular problem. And it's using data and intelligence to try and help. And I think in this field, to James's point, I think data, intelligence, and technology are going to be used to the fore across the globe. For Hope for Justice, we have this crazy, audacious vision that we can actually live in a world free from slavery. It just hasn't happened yet, but we're moving to that point. So it requires us to have a scale and an impact that we're bringing across those 4 key areas. Prevention. So in places like rural areas across Africa, we're building self-help groups. We've just got short of 6,000 women at any one time that meet in groups of 12 to try and help educate the local community, raise enough money so their family don't get debt bonded. We need to see more of that grow so it creates stable communities that can launch entrepreneurial businesses that can stop it from happening. Because prevention's the best cure, really. It's the only area that we have to focus on the most. That links directly with reformation, where we need to see laws change across the globe. So we just had a bill passed through the House in America, the TVPA bill. It's the commonly known as the Frederick Douglass Act, the realignment of the Frederick Douglass Act that was first brought in 20 years ago, an update to it, passed through the House. We're hoping it will pass through the Senate, and that will bring provisions for US federal expenditure going forward to ensure that, for instance, that they're not buying hotels where hotel staff haven't been trained on the issues of modern day slavery. We're expecting an update to the 2015 Modern Slavery Bill here in the UK coming through this year, and certain provisions coming through around government departments, and they're not buying products that have been made through slave labor. At times we had the issue of latex gloves during the pandemic for PPE, where they were coming from Malaysia. The German government banned them coming in. The US government banned them in, but the UK government didn't.
Because all the MPs were making money out of PPE, that's why.
I can't make that comment, but what I would say is it needs us to have a different approach to this. So those are the 2. And then across the board, we're trying to increase the number of rescue hubs that we have and increase the number of lighthouses that we have from a restoration point of view. We have in this country what we call independent modern slavery advocates. Each one of them have a portfolio. We're working at the moment with British Red Cross and with another project called Snowdrop, who look after trafficking victims to create IMSAs, the Independent Modern Slavery Advocates, almost like nurses are. So people know what a nurse does, that you would know what an IMSA does to try and help support trafficking victims, because that's where you see them get the right level of care, criminal and civil litigation going through, and we see traffickers held to account for it. People often tell us is what we're trying to do is impossible. Often all the time. The weight of everything that we're seeing across the globe, how slavery has existed in different forms through generation to generation, trying to be impossible. And we choose to greet it with the words that Muhammad Ali said. The impossible is just a big word thrown around by small-minded men who find it easier to live in a world they've been given than the power they have to change it.
That's so
impossible
true.
is nothing. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is a dare. And if you can greet the problem and the darkness with this mentality to go, no, we're going to have this. We're going to deal with this. And in our generation, we're going to shift culture to a point where this is not acceptable. Because for years, William Wilberforce fought against the transatlantic slave trade. But there was a moment where they saw a shift. And it didn't happen necessarily when he thought it would do. It didn't happen in the way he would like to, but it required him to have a certain tenacity. And we've realized that what we're trying to do is almost like the cathedral builders in years gone past. Because cathedral builders, when they laid the foundation stone, some cathedrals took 400 years to build, which means you're laying a foundation stone that you're not even going to see anywhere near
You
this.
don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, you're not going to see any of it. But suddenly we stand back and we look at some cathedrals in awe across the world that have been built by people with pretty basic tools. And even today, even to build structures that are similar is really, really complex. But I look at it, you have to have almost that cathedral in your heart. You have to be so caught up with a vision that you can change people's lives to help the weak, the marginalized, the poor, the oppressed. You can help them to have a completely different reality. It's amazing.
I love
Tim,
that.
that's incredible, man. Like what you just said there, like that needs to be spliced up, put out everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the spokesman for Hope for Justice. That's like, honestly, mate, it's so good, man, to be around people like you that are trying to help everybody. And like that energy that I felt when you said that, is the sort of thing that's going to push me on to try and help, and probably you. And that's what people need to hear. I mean, that's amazing. I think the best thing is, like, where I'm trying to think, how can people help? All this information you're giving in all these different areas, just that knowledge of, knowing about everything you've said, different places, different areas where this person might be oppressed or not, that's going to be in the back of people's minds when they hear this. So that, like you say, that's amazing. I don't really know. I think that should be like the motto of Hope for Justice. How you said everything there.
And I love that thing about in a very different scenario, I've been told things that I've done is impossible, and you really like to, that kind of eggs you on more to try and do it. And you can look at impossible as one word saying impossible. You can look at it, I'm possible. You can separate it and go, well, actually, I'm possible and we're possible. And there's loads of different things that can come off that. I love that. I love the fact that that's like you're driving it forward off the back of like something that the majority of people think it's not possible.
Yeah, it's a spirit that gets on a group of people.
Yeah.
So I want to have an organization that if I fall, someone else will take my place. That
still the work carries on.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an amazing book called Starfish and the Spider. Don't know if you ever read it.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
That when the Spanish came in and attacked the Incas, they were able to pretty much decimate them because they took out the Inca leader. And that's like more of a spider model where you take the head off it, the spider dies. But if you cut a starfish in half, it grows another starfish. And when the Americas were attacked, the kind of authentic Indians in America, the kind of indigenous people weren't formed into one massive structure. They were based into smaller conglomerate groups that were looking after a core area. They were looking after their specific area. So as a result of it, it made it really difficult to take down. And you want to have a movement where people go, I'm in.
Yeah.
And I'll lead from where I'm at. I don't need somebody to give me everything. I'm gonna educate myself. I'm gonna go on the website and get as much information as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use
true.
my hands.
A lot of people say, where do I find it? You've got a website. I've been through your website. You've got a social media platform. You've actually got a really good following. Yeah. So, we got 3 minutes. So, Tim, I don't know what to say. I mean, thank you so much for your time, mate, and coming and sharing your energy with us. And I hope this can, lay the spirit of what you've said, can lay on these guys as well as me, because in a group, we're stronger with knowing this information.
Yeah, it's blown my mind, honestly. Really. I've just been sorry if I've been staring. I've just been glued to your eyes. You probably think
It's so inspiring. In the point where I sort of lost my way, what I was going to say, you're so inspiring, and you've got a vision to abolish slavery, and you made the point that it's not been done yet, but you've got that goal that you want to achieve this, and I think that alone is just so impactful and so powerful, and you're just incredible. You're doing a great thing.
Yeah, amazing, Tim. And I know I've just said like people can find you, but like, is there anything you want to give a message to anyone, or is there any? Do you want to give the social channels or the website, or not, or just tell people just to look
up Hope for Justice, like generally across all of the different social platforms, whichever one people engage with the most, and don't do nothing. So people always will think about things like I'll do that when, or, only whenever I find myself in a position where I'm in a place where it's easier or where it's more convenient. What we end up doing in events, if say, for instance, we ask people to give in an event, there's a factoring of 3 to 4% of people that will do something instantly. There'll be another 3 or 4% who'll say, I'll do it when I get home. It never happens. It's like dreamland. So it's almost like virtual reality. And I would encourage everybody I'll go back to that challenge I was given, to anyone who's listening, to the reality is you can all do something. And if of the thought that you could do something and it's going to mean somebody else is set free, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
Is there a metric? Like, I do one thing every 3 days. Because I don't know, maybe it's just the way my head works. But like, how are we going to leave here and do we've got to do something.
I think you just touched on it. Challenge yourself to do something, or challenge yourself not to do nothing. As soon as you put that challenge yourself in front of it, it's like you can't just go on the web. You can't just Google it and not do anything.
Okay.
You have to challenge yourself.
Okay.
Or you can promise everyone.
I'm giving a metric of something to do. Yeah.
It's all videoed, so if you make a promise.
Yeah. It's just good to put a metric on something so and you're accountable then to not forget in 3 days. Okay, look, we've got to do this. Like we've got to do a fundraising.
You do it.
That's why events are so good.
Yeah.
Because you can go, I'm going to do this thing, and it might be outside my comfort zone, but I'm going to do it, and it's a date, and I've got to build up to it, and I've got to tell people about it, and sometimes events are good.
Okay, so in that respect then, Tim, anything we can help with, let us know. And I know that's putting it on you, which is not ideal, but anywhere I can help. Matt's film producer, and actor, so anything in that area. Jay is a producer and works with, and my background. So anything that we can do, if it ever comes across that we can connect or do something, and then we'll think on our own something we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thanks very much.
Thanks again, Tim.
Thank you so much, mate.
Oi! I knew you was a strong lad, Tim.